A warm welcome to you, learners. We're going to be reviewing NECO-BECE past questions, and we're going to be attending to the answers and giving illustrations on why we go for certain answers or the correct answers, leaving behind all the distractors. So join me as we make another interesting journey in reviewing past questions in NECO-BECE examination. So I need you to get hold of your biology note and your pen in order to take note of all the key points and the illustrations that catches your attention for reference. All right, let's move. Okay, so the first question before us today says the pollutant released by automobiles is called dash. What is the name of the pollutant released by automobiles? Precisely the exhaust pipe. A, carbon dioxide. B, carbon monoxide. C, hydrogen. D, nitrogen. E, oxygen. So can you decide what your answer would be from options A to E? Write it down in your biology notes and let's compare with the answer I have in the next slide. So take your time, process the information and write down your correct answer, the option and the word answer to it. Okay, have you done that in your biology notes? All right, so what do you think the answer is? What did you go for? Is it option A, B, C, D, or E? The answer is actually option B, carbon monoxide, because when fuel is combusted or undergoes combustion in car engines, the product is a deficiency of oxygen, making it carbon monoxide instead of carbon dioxide. So carbon monoxide, which is just one molecule of oxygen present, is what is released, and it's actually a major pollutant in the environment. So let's review the answer in the next slide. So the answer is option B, carbon monoxide. All the other options are in red. So take note in case you see this question in subsequent exams. Which of the following is a skin disease? So which of them is related to skin disease? A, cough. B, eczema. C, malaria. D, obesity. E, rickets. Choose the correct answer and write it down in your biology notes. Remember, always write the option letter and the answer to that option so that you are sure of what you're going for. The trick of this is you need to study all the options and sort out the ones that are unrelated to the question. So only one relates to the question. So is it cough, eczema, malaria, obesity, or rickets? I guess you went for eczema. Option B is the answer. Now question 3 says the administration of any chemical substance in a manner which deviates from the approved medical patterns best defines drug dash. So we have to fill in the blank space. What is the administration of any chemical substance in a manner which deviates from the approved medical patterns best defined as drug what? Is it drug abuse, addiction, C, dependence, D, tolerance, E, use? The answer is abuse, drug abuse. So the answer is option A, drug abuse. Let's look at the next slide. Option A, drug abuse. So take note of that in your biology notes as we move on. Question 4 says one of the following is not a reflex action. You know what reflex actions are? Reflex and non-reflex actions when we study the topic nervous system in year 8 and partly an introductory part in year 7 when we did the organization of life, the organs and organ systems. You remember? So a reflex action is that action that is voluntary, that you lack control over. You don't have any specific control over them. So is it A, walking, B, eye blink, C, heartbeat, D, sneezing, E, muscle twitch? So one of the following is not a reflex action, meaning all the other options are examples of reflex action, but one of them is not a reflex action. So what answer would you go for? Write it down in your biology notes. I think the correct answer is walking, because I can choose to sit the way I'm sitting down right now. I can choose to stand up like this and walk. I can choose to bend or not bend. I can choose to just sit still like this and not do anything part time. That is a voluntary action because I decide when to carry out the action. I decide when to act it out. If I choose to sleep now or to lie down on the bed, it's voluntary. If I choose not to lie down, it's also voluntary. But an action that I cannot determine or control, it just comes naturally by instinct and by natural design, are what we refer to as reflex action. So the answer here is walking. Eye blink is an involuntary action. Heartbeat, you don't have control over it. It just keeps beating throughout life. Sneezing, when it comes, it just comes. You can't control it. You have to hold it back. You can't. It will just come out. Muscle twitch, of course, the muscles twitching at every point in time as we flex our muscles and do other things. So let's look at the answer. The answer is A, walking. All right, next question says the following are reasons for skill acquisition except for This under vocational skill acquisition in biology when it comes to grassroots awareness in terms of youth, children, and the vulnerable. So A, fund making, B, managing emergencies, C, self-employment, D, survival strategy, E, taking risks. So what is the answer? Write it down in your biology note as we review the correct answer together and state the reason why. So the following are reasons for skill acquisition except for one. Is it for fund making? Managing emergencies? Self-employment makes sense because you want to be self-employed. Survival strategy, of course. When you acquire skills, you want to be able to apply that skills wherever you go. You can do a little setup or a startup and begin to grow yourself until you become self-employed and being able to survive in that environment. Then taking risks. When you acquire skills, it takes risk to implement what you're doing, to seek for contracts, to get jobs done. And sometimes you might do a job and someone might say it is not well done and maybe it has to be redone. You have to refund money. But there's a lot of risk taking in carrying out skills that are learned through different vocational means. So the actual answer that stands out here, or the odd one out, is A, fund making. So let's look at it together. So fund making is actually not a reason for skill acquisition, but the other options are reasons why we acquire skill acquisition. So take out time to go over this video at intervals. Pause from question 1 all the way to question 5, where we just stop to take note of the explanations given why some answers are chosen to be the correct answers. Then checkmate with what you have in your biology note and make corrections where necessary, because these questions are repeated from time to time or year in year out once you're familiar with them, and that's why we're having this revision session. Question 6 says, which of the following is an example of waterborne disease? Remember, the keyword there is waterborne disease, a disease that is transmitted through water as a medium. So which of these diseases can be transmitted through waterborne pattern or waterborne medium? A, cold, B, measles, C, pneumonia, D, tuberculosis, E, typhoid. So take a look at the options one after the other and process the correct answer from all other distractors. Write it down in your biology notes. We're going to be reviewing the answer shortly. So are you there? What option did you go for? If I were you, I wouldn't go for option A. Cold is not waterborne, it's actually airborne. We have measles, that's not the answer. We have pneumonia. Measles is mostly contracted through contact with an infected person, direct contact in most cases. Then pneumonia is cold related, that's airborne. Tuberculosis is also airborne. So the only option that best describes this answer is option E, typhoid. Typhoid is a disease that is contracted through waterborne means. When we take contaminated water or contaminated fruits, the juice from it, once it's contaminated, it can lead to typhoid. So let's review the answer. So the answer is option E, typhoid, as you can see. Moving on, question 7 says the process by which food substances are broken down into simple and soluble form is called dash. A, defecation, B, digestion, C, excretion, D, mastication, E, regurgitation. What's your answer for this question? Write it down as usual. Let's compare and give some form of illustrations as to why we pick a particular answer. Are you there? Already written? Okay. So what's the process by which food substances are broken down into simple and soluble form or absorbable form? It's called dash. The answer is option B, digestion. Defecation is when you remove excreta, like the excreta that was saved or stored in the rectum. It is released to the external environment from the anus. So that's not the answer. Excretion is the process of removing waste product of metabolism from the body to the external environment. Then mastication is when we chew on the food we have in our mouth. Then regurgitation is when we bring out or vomit what we ate earlier. So the correct answer here is option B, digestion, as you can see in the answer slide. Alright, hope you're finding this class interesting and taking note of the key and salient points. So the distribution of materials within an organism is known as, of course, we have plants and animal cells, and each of these cells possess or have several organelles or parts or components that perform specific functions. In fact, some of them are called specialized cells. So when materials or substances are distributed from one point to another within the cell, What is that process called? A. Circulation, B. Digestion, C. Excretion, D. Reproduction, E. Respiration. I know you're smiling now and you're going for the option A. Circulation. Alright, moving on. Which of the following is a flowering plant? Recall, there are flowering and non-flowering plants. Flowering plants are plants that produces flowers, which is a modified leaf in plants at one point in time in their life cycle, and that happens from one generation to another. So any plant that produces a flower at its state of maturity, of course we know that the flower is a modified leaf, like a leaf that changed into a flower to indicate that the plant is fully mature to produce its own fruits or food, while non-flowering plants don't produce flower at any stage in their life cycle. They use other means of propagation like the spore formation, and some of them are propagated using artificial propagation. But the focus here is which of the following is a flowering plant. So A, we have conifer, B, fern, C, ixora, D, liverwort, E, moss. What's your answer? Put it in your biology notes and reference it as we compare. So conifer is actually not a flowering plant. They produce their spores in cones which explode and the seeds spread across on fibrous ground and grows. Fern does not produce through a flowering means. Then ixora, of course, ixora is a flowering plant. Liverwort and moss, they produce by releasing spores in a structure called the sporangium. Plural is sporangia. So the odd one out of this, or the flowering plant in question, is ixora. All other ones are non-flowering plants. So the correct answer is option C, ixora. You can make further research to study more about this particular plant and its features and characteristics as well. Okay, the conversion of water vapor to liquid is known as dash. A. Condensation, B. Deposition, C. Evaporation, D. Sublimation, and E. Vaporization. So which is the correct option that best describes this process, the conversion of water vapor to liquid, that is changing water vapor into liquid form, is known as dash. Recall, water vapor is in gaseous form. So when gaseous substances are converted back to its liquid form, what do you call? Is it condensation, deposition, evaporation, sublimation, or vaporization? So I believe you already have the correct answer stated in your biology notes. The correct answer is option A, condensation, and that forms part of the water cycle. So it starts from steam. Steam rises and water vapor is collected in the cloud, forming clouds. Then when it is highly laden and can no longer hold, it will be converted due to the coldness of that height or that altitude back to liquid form, and it falls down as rain or precipitation. So condensation is the name of that process that converts gaseous substances like water vapor back to liquid state. Alright, having said this, we are going to continue from number 11, which says, which of the following vitamins is also referred to as the sunshine vitamin? A. Vitamin A, B. Vitamin B, C. Vitamin D, D. Vitamin E, and E. Vitamin K. So can you relate? I guess you've penned down your answer already. So the sunshine vitamin is actually that vitamin we derive when we expose ourselves to the early morning sun, say from sunrise to between 9 and 10 a.m. It's very good for the body, and we call it the sunshine vitamin. So the answer is actually option C, vitamin D. All other options are not the sunshine vitamin. So let's review the answer. So option C, vitamin D, is the correct answer. Okay, moving on. Number 12 says, which of the following is a renewable source of energy? A. We have coal, B. Diesel, C. Petrol, D. Gasoline, E. Wood. I know the answer is staring right at you. So put down the answer in your biology note and let's talk about the answers together and state the reason why. I'm waiting. Are you there? Okay, so if you notice, coal is a fossil fuel, so it's not renewable. Diesel is also a fossil fuel gotten from crude oil. Petrol is a fossil fuel, so it's not renewable. Once it goes out of quantity, or once it goes out of existence, it cannot be returned again. So it is not renewable. Gasoline is also a product gotten from crude oil. It's not renewable. Wood is gotten from plant, and plants will keep on producing themselves from one generation to another. So you can say option E is the correct answer. All right, you can see it here. It's renewable. Just to lay a little emphasis on that answer we just chose. Of course, when we say wood, we can get it from plants and plant materials continuously from one generation to another. But once wood has been burnt or used as firewood, the product is ash, and ash cannot be returned back to its natural state. So in that case, we will say it has undergone an irreversible reaction, and so on. Number 13, the following are methods of controlling soil erosion except one. So which of the methods here does not involve the control of soil erosion? A, bush burning. B, mulching. C, planting of cover crops. D, planting of trees. E, terracing. Of course, I know you can sort the odd one out. The odd one out is A, bush burning. Mulching is when you use dry grass or forage or hay to cover the surface of ridges or mounds where yams and other tubers are planted to prevent direct sunshine from hitting them and making them to get overheated and spoiled. Planting of cover crops like groundnuts that are canopy-like and other plants like soya bean and the rest, they help to protect the surface of land so that it serves as water breaker or wind breaker when they hover at the surface of the soil or land. Then planting of trees, of course, trees serve as wind breakers naturally, and their roots serve as water breakers as well in an environment, so they will prevent soil erosion. Then terracing is when we have a slopy land and it is dug in such a way that the ridges or whatever plantation is done there is done in form of staircases. So it goes like staircases like that, so that when water passes through the surface of the land, it doesn't pass with so much velocity or high speed to wash away the topsoil, because it is landing on each staircase dug in the land. So we call that process terracing. You can also find that topic in agricultural science, and you can do an extensive study to understand what terracing means. But simply digging the ground in order to carry out plantation, but in a staircase manner, like step by step. Okay, correct answer is A, bush burning, as you can see. So number 14 says the method of growing food crops and trees on the same piece of land is dash, or is known as dash. A, afforestation. B, agroforestry. C, crop rotation. D, horticulture. And E, mixed cropping. So what is the correct answer? Write it down in your biology note as we reference it together. Okay, so if you went for afforestation, you'll be incorrect, because afforestation simply refers to the process of replanting trees in order to populate the environment. Agroforestry has to do with the aspect of using chemicals to control forest plants or forest trees and other domestication of forest materials. So that's not the answer to this question. Crop rotation is that system of growing crops from one year to another by spacing out the farming season. For instance, a land can be used for a year and allowed to rest for another period of time so that it can regain its nutrients and its vitality for another new planting season. Horticulture is not the answer, because horticulture has to do with the production of leafy crops or vegetables and all that, including flowers and all that, gardening. But mixed cropping is actually the answer for method of growing food crops and trees on the same piece of land. So you call it mixed cropping. All right, it's there already. Number 15 says disposable hand gloves in first aid box is used to dash. A, keep the injured area compressed. B, prevent blood circulation. C, prevent further injuries. D, reduce bleeding. E, reduce chance of infection. So what is the correct answer? Go, put it down in your biology note and let's review it together. So if you went for A, the answer is incorrect. If you went for B, it's not to prevent blood circulation. If you went for C, it is not to prevent further injuries on a patient or victim. D, reduce bleeding. It is not the work of the hand gloves to reduce bleeding, but it is the work of the hand gloves to reduce chance of infection or contracting infection by treating a patient and so on. So option E is the goal for this question. So right now let's delve on to question 16, which says what is metabolism? So this is requesting for a definition. A, the process of breathing. B, the sum of all chemical reactions in an organism. C, the process of cell division. D, the movement of substances across cell membranes. So what is the correct answer? Looking at the list of options, put it down in your biology notes, then we'll review the answer together as usual. Okay, so I believe you have that pen down already. So the answer is actually option B, the sum total of all chemical reactions in an organism. That is what we define as metabolism, and it has two processes, catabolism and anabolism. They all require energy to be carried out. So the answer is option B, as you can see in the slide showing the correct answer, the sum of all chemical reactions in an organism. Next question before us is, what is the role of enzymes in metabolic reactions? It's like a build-up from the previous question we just attempted. A, increase energy consumption. B, decrease reaction rate. C, catalyze chemical reactions. D, change reactants into products without any effect on themselves. Or is it option E, both C and D? So what is the role of enzymes? That's their job, their function in metabolic reactions. So pick from the options, write down your biology notes. Okay, so let's review the questions again and compare what you have. So increase energy consumption, is that what the role of enzyme is? I don't think so, no. B, decrease reaction rate, that's not its function. C, catalyze chemical reactions. Of course, it does catalyze or start up chemical reaction and it determine whether the rate of reaction will be very fast or slow. Then D is also another option saying change reactants into products without any effect on themselves. Then option E says both C and D. So if you look at these options correctly, or clearly rather, you'll see that option C and D are the best description for this question. So I'll go for option E, both C and D. Let's confirm that. So option E, both C and D. We carry out catalyzation reactions to catalyze chemical reactions to change reactants into products without any effect on themselves. Sometimes we say they alter the rate of a chemical reaction and remain unchanged. Okay, moving on. Question 18 says the end product of fermentation in human muscle cells is dash. When fermentation occurs, what is the end product? Fermentation is a breaking down process that does not require the presence of oxygen, so it's an anaerobic reaction. So is it A, ethanol, B, lactic acid, C, acetic acid, D, pyruvate, E, glucose? Have you written down your answer? Let's compare what we have in our slide here. The answer is option B. The end product or the finished product will be lactic acid, and that's what the muscles use for its activities. All right, it says which organelle is responsible for producing ATP through oxidative phosphorylation. Organelle in the cell of plant or animals refers to the part or a particular component that perform a specialized function. Then when you talk about ATP, ATP is a form of energy that is absorbable by the body's cells and tissue through cellular respiration. It is fully called adenosine triphosphate, that's ATP. Then through oxidative, meaning there's an addition of oxygen in the reaction to break it down, to further break it down into simpler absorbable form. Phosphorylation, that's the addition of phosphorus to also break it down to ATP. So which of these organelles does this process or does this job? So you have A, nucleus, B, mitochondria, C, ribosome, D, Golgi apparatus, E, endoplasmic reticulum. I know you've done this under cells and cell transport, and we've known the past or the function of each component or organelle. So this answer should not be far-fetched. The answer is option B, mitochondria, because it is the powerhouse of the cell. The nucleus is actually the central part of the cell that controls or directs all other activities of the cells. The ribosome, of course, is the place for protein synthesis. The Golgi apparatus is another component also. Then the endoplasmic reticulum, and so on. So the answer is option B, mitochondria. Singular is mitochondria when you have just one. All right, let's take the last question in this segment. It says, which pathway generates ATP, that's adenosine triphosphate, without oxygen present? So that reaction where oxygen is absent or oxygen is cut out to allow it to go through its process naturally without the presence of oxygen is called what? A. Aerobic respiration. B. Anaerobic respiration. C. Krebs cycle. D. Electron transport chain. And E. All of the above. So quickly make your choice and write it down in your biology notes. Okay. So if you look at all these options, study it carefully. I can go from E to D to C. So the answer is option B, anaerobic respiration, because that's the respiration that takes place when oxygen is cut out or absent in a chemical reaction, while aerobic respiration is when oxygen is present in the breaking down of food substances and other materials. So let's review the answer in the next slide. Option B is anaerobic respiration. I hope you found this learning interesting and the review of these past questions and giving you illustrations and explanations why we went for the answers we went for. You can study them extensively in your biology note and textbook, or you can even go online in an online search to gain more insight. And with that, you'll be fully prepared for your NECO-BECE external examinations. I'll see you in another segment, and I wish you all the best in your studies.